I was listening to some sermons and reading some verses and thinking about how good God has been to me in my life and where He's brought me from. I've been doing a lot of building lately, and it kind of reiterated what I want to talk about this morning. I want to talk about leaning on Jesus. Turn to Song of Solomon, chapter number 8. Song of Solomon, I believe, is one of the greatest love stories in all of the Bible. It has some really cool examples if you look for them, and if you read between the lines, it's quite risque. And it'll help you in your marriage. It'll help you in your relationship.
I heard that.
You heard that? Okay. But there's a verse in chapter 8, verse number 5. And it says, "Who is this that cometh up from the wilderness, leaning upon her beloved?" That's all I'm going to read in that particular chapter. But I thought about it. Who is this? You may be unknown, uncared about, unthought about by most of the world. Most of the world would look at us and say, "Who is this that cometh up out of the wilderness?" Whether we realize it or not, our world is a wilderness experience. Whatever situation and circumstance you happen to be in, you're going to face some wildernesses. You know, you guys were talking about you had relationship trouble this morning. Some marriages are made in heaven. Some aren't. And there's only one other alternative to being made in heaven. But during this time of confusion in our country, and you know my opinion about this time, and if you don't call me sometime, I'll tell you. But it's thrown people together in closeness. And sometimes that causes problems because we forget that we're all different. We forget that we all have a separate mind. We forget that everybody doesn't think like me. It's like Gabby said this morning, they can be wrong if they want to. But it's still, we're different people from different cultures, from different ideals. And if we don't ever learn to accept that in our jobs, in our marriages, in our churches, there's always going to be fights and problems. This morning I want to talk about that verse. Who is this that cometh up from the wilderness, leaning on her beloved? The world expects and wants you to fail. But Jude chapter 1 verse number 24 says, "Unto Him who is able to keep us from falling and present us faultless before the presence of His glory." Unto Him, leaning on my beloved. I look down through my life and I have a tendency to lean toward worry. I have a tendency. I was building the deck or building the porch or whatever you want to call it for Gabby yesterday. And I worry about every cut. And I worry about every wall. I was building one for Tiffany last week. And I worry about whether the steps were going to line up and whether everything was level and whether it was going to connect. And it's been a long time since I've been able to build new construction. I used to build new houses, and they're easy. You know, you start with everything perfect, and everything is level, and everything is, but lately I've been building on remodels and putting decks on crooked houses. And I was thinking about, you got to prop up. I heard, Gene Franklin preach a sermon on propped up on the leaning side one time. And I was thinking about all of it. We were building Gabby's porch yesterday, and Dean says it's sunk 10 inches over the last 10 years, but it hasn't really. But the porch had begun to lean. And so we had to compensate for that lean. We had to shim it up. We had to prop it up. We had to give it something to brace, to level it back out. And sometimes in our lives, sometimes in our marriages, sometimes in our jobs, sometimes in our relationship with God. I heard about some folks that had some friends that had walked away from God. We have a tendency to lean. Our natural tendency is to lean away. And that's when we need to be. She came out of the wilderness leaning on her beloved. And I look down through my life and I see all of the times that I had a tendency to lean toward evil and lean toward lust and lean toward sexual immorality and lean toward theft and lean toward lying and lean toward all of the things that I have a tendency to lean to. And if it hadn't been for God, unto Him who is able to present me faultless, unto Him who is able to stabilize and strengthen and prop me up, unto Him be all the glory. Because it ain't nothing of me. And I don't care how good you think you are, it ain't nothing of you either. But Song of Solomon says, who is this? You're not inferior because you have a problem with leaning. You're normal. Everybody keeps talking about want to get back to normal. Well, you're already there. You're weird. You're leaning. You have a tendency to go astray. All we like sheep have gone astray. Everyone to his own way. Our sin nature that is down inside of us has that constant pull, like the old Indian legend. Which dog is going to win? The one you feed. Yeah. Who is this that's coming up out of the wilderness? Coming out of where you are. Coming out of your sin nature. Coming out of your history. Coming out of your background. Coming out of whatever it is you come out from. Who is this that's coming up from? Notice coming up from.
Yeah.
Who is this? The world doesn't care who you are. But God says the hairs on your head are numbered. God says you are the apple of His eye. Who is this? The world don't care. God does. Mm-hmm. And the only way you and I are going to make it up out of the wilderness is leaning on our beloved. Yeah. We're going to face all kinds of times. How do you get out? Leaning on the beloved. Any of you familiar with the Rodney Atkins song? When you're going through hell, keep on going. Yeah. Don't slow down. If you're scared, don't show it. It might be you get out before the devil even knows you're there. It's not a spiritual song, but it talks about angels and it talks about praying, so I'm going to use it. But you think about it. That's what God says to us. He says you're going to go through hell. Keep on going. If you're scared, don't show it. What time I am afraid, I will trust in Thee. Leaning on my beloved. I cannot make it. When I had both of my knees replaced, I had a walker that I leaned on. When I had my shoulder operated on, I had a crutch that I leaned on. When I had my elbow re-screwed together, I had a sling that I leaned on. When I've gone through tough times in my life, I have a wife that I lean on. I have a God that I can lean on. If you're sitting here this morning or listening out there this morning and you don't have God, if you don't have your beloved that you can lean on, you're going to fall. That's why so many fall astray. That's why so many walk away. That's why so many, because Demas have forsaken me, having loved this present world. They never had it to begin with. I'm not saying that every time we slip that we don't have a relationship with God. I'm just saying we're not leaning on the right staff. Or was it somewhere? I forgot. I was reading it. The other day. But it talks about Jacob at the end of his life. And he was standing there and he was blessing all the sons of Joseph. And he said, and he was leaning on his staff, worshiping. When we lean on Jesus, like the song we sang this morning, leaning on Jesus. You lean on your finances, they're going to let you down. You lean on your friends, they're going to let you down. You lean on your marriage, and it's going to let you down. But if you lean on Jesus, your marriage, your finances, your job, and everything else will level out. I find myself leaning in the wrong direction. Y'all know me. I have a tendency to lean toward worry. I have a tendency to lean toward anger. I have a tendency to lean toward evil. But when I start to lean the wrong direction, when I was rebuilding the porches and rebuilding the decks and rebuilding this building, God knows this building. It was built in 1911. It leaned in every direction. But you brace up the leaning side. You put some kind of stability in the leaning side. I was telling Gabby and Dean yesterday, I found my Father's Day presents that it was these screw jack things, you know, these big poles, and they screw them, and it screws up. Well, no, that's the wrong word, ain't it? It jacks up. It doesn't screw it up. I do that. It fixes it. But you sit there and you put it up under whatever it is that's leaning. And then the more you turn it, the more it raises it up. And I'd seen them on a little scale, but I had never seen anybody reach that high with them. And I thought about, that's what God does for us. The more we lean, the more He jacks it up. The more He turns to screw. The more we have a tendency to lean, the more He has a tendency to love. The more that I have a problem with something, the more He keeps pushing me back the other way and showing me that this side is far more better than the other side. It's better to be straight up, level, than it is to lean. The porch on the back of my house, I've rebuilt everybody else's porch and mine's falling in. Looks like I could get some help once in a while anyway. But when I was living here in town, you could take a marble and you put it on one side of the kitchen floor and you just let it go. You didn't push it, you just let it go. And it would roll. And there was a mouse coming across the other side one time and the ball was rolling so fast it killed a mouse on the other side. That's how bad it was. It was 2 3/4 inches drop. And when I pulled all the floor and everything else, I had to shim. I'm not lying. I put 2 by 10s on there and bolted them till the original's 2 3/4 inches higher on one side than it was the other, because over the years it had begun to lean. And the reason it had begun to lean is because it didn't have the proper foundation.
That's right.
And a lot of times in our lives, we start adding to the top of the building before we reestablish and fix the foundation. Our foundation should be God. Yeah. If your foundation is based on this, you're going to lean. Right. If your foundation is based on your goodness, you're going to lean. Yeah, amen. If your foundation is based on how much control you have over your life, you're going to lean. But when we come up from the wilderness, leaning on our beloved, leaning on Jesus, safe and secure. My deck on the back at the house now, there's an overhang on the porch. And I noticed several months ago that it was, way out here. And there was a gap between the house and the top of the porch. And it was leaning. And there were screws. And so me and my redneck engineering, I took me a rope and I lassoed the top of it. And I tied it down. And I pulled it. And I put me a trucker's hitch in there because you can get more crank on it. And I pulled and I pulled. And I tied it off to the bottom. I tied it off to the foundation. And we had some 70-mile-an-hour winds the other day, and that rope stood strong. My roof don't lean. And maybe I didn't fix it the professional way. Maybe I didn't take it down and rebuild the foundation and screw it to the soffit and all that kind of stuff. I just tied it off with a rope. But it don't lean. You see, some of the folks are going to laugh at you about who you lean on. What you lean on. But as long as you're leaning on your beloved, it may look silly to the world. It may look like nothing worthy to the world. But she came up out of the wilderness, leaning on her. She got out of the wilderness. The only way she got out of the wilderness was leaning on her beloved. If it hadn't been for that, she'd still be stuck in the wilderness. If it wasn't for God and me leaning on Him, I'd still be stuck in that nowhere life. If it wasn't for me leaning on my beloved, and you can call Him what you want to, you can laugh at me all you want to, but I know that's the only thing that got me out of the wilderness, was leaning on my beloved. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Thank you. I have these kids pray for me every Sunday morning. The Papa will have the right words to say. All the kids in Sunday school call me Papa. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse number 7. Y'all ought to memorize these. If you've never memorized any scripture in your life, y'all ought to memorize these. But we have this treasure in our earthen vessels, that the excellency of the power may be of God and not of us. Leaning on my beloved. The power of God has kept me up. The power of God has got me out of the wilderness. The power of God has got me where I am. We are troubled on every side, but we're not distressed. We are perplexed, but we're not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed. Always bearing about in the body of the dying of the Lord Jesus, that the life also of Jesus might be made manifest in our body. You may be going through a struggle, but you're not over. You may be going through some marriage difficulties, but it ain't over. You may be going through a financial challenge, but it ain't over. Your truck may be broke down, but that's why people go to school to be a mechanic. Your garden may not be growing, but you got a water faucet and some more seeds. I got more weeds in my garden than I've got seeds in my garden right now. It's pathetic. I don't understand. The curse is real out of my place. Adam and his self-righteous self. He's the one who brought all them weeds in our life. The garden was good until he got there. It's amazing how you plant a green bean. It takes a month to grow this high. You don't even plant a weed. That sucker's this high when you can turn around overnight. My garden looks like green carpet out there. I thought about just mowing it and say, that's my new lawn. But he says, we're going to be down, but we don't have to despair. Was it, Daniel, you used to listen to that Jumanji or something? I've been knocked down, but I get up. Yeah, I've been knocked down, but I get up again. All I remember is them big old lips on the face for a CD. I remember that. Chumbawamba. Yeah, okay. I used to hear it playing all through the house. You know, I get knocked down, but I get up again, or whatever it was. I don't know.
Your name, gonna get your name, everybody.
Everybody saying, hey, y'all join with us. But that's what God says. He says, you're going to get knocked down, but a good man gets up again. Yeah. You're going to have trouble. If you don't have trouble in your relationship, you ain't got a relationship. Some of y'all got some good ones, huh? I mean, you look at these single folks around here, they're miserable. They got nobody to fight with.
I'm pretty happy, actually, enjoying it.
Oh, there it is, Hebrews 11:21. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed both the sons of Joseph and worshiped, leaning upon the top of his staff. The Holy Spirit, our staff. The Paraclete, the one who comes alongside. Man, if it wasn't for the Holy Spirit, and I know this is a Baptist church, but I love the Holy Spirit. Amen. It'll make you do crazy stuff like shout. It'll make you do crazy stuff like wave your hands. I know as reserved and as calm as I am, y'all could not imagine me just taking off running in front of the church, jumping up on a church pew and waving my arm. But it'll make you do that. Some of y'all just sad. Sit in church there. Have mercy. But not only are we supposed to lean on Him, sometimes we have to lean on each other. Amen. Y'all remember the story of when Moses went up to the mountain? Kevin, you were there, right? And Aaron was left down in the valley. And Aaron kind of succumbed to the pressure of the people. And they got all the gold together and they made a calf.
Yeah.
And they started dancing around it and worshiping the calf because Moses was gone.
That's crazy.
And then when Moses got back, you know, after he was the first one that broke the law and got all ticked off and stuff. And Aaron said, you know, I'm not even worthy. You ought to just get rid of me. And Moses said, no, lean on me. Lean on me. And then in Exodus 17, y'all remember the war that was going on? Moses went up to the mountain. And when he'd hold his hands up, they'd win. And when his arms got to droop, and I don't care how strong you are, and I'm stronger than most, but I can't hold them up here for 3 or 4 days. And so I need, and guess who it was that come over? Aaron and Hur. The one that Moses had helped hold up a little while back was now, the helpee had become the helper. And see, and there's going to come a time in your life to where you might need some help. But there's going to come another time in your life where you might be given the help. And I'm looking at them, but I'm talking to y'all. There's another time when Paul, everybody knows Paul, right? He was the preacher of the New Testament. What, like 13 books of the Bible he wrote. He was the man. He was the evangelist. He was the C.T. Townsend of the Grecian shores. He was the Bishop T.D. Jakes. He was the Joel Osteen. He was the John Hagin. He was the man. He was the recognized preacher. And he got mad. He said, I'm done with that boy. Take him home. Get him. I don't even want to see his face. Get John Mark out of him. Don't want him around me no more. Get him out of here. I ain't even sure he knows what. I ain't even sure the boy's a Christian. Just get him out of my face. But then, over in 2 Timothy, when Paul was getting ready to die, I'm going too far. I don't know who it is keep messing with my notes up here. Jill, you messing with my notes up here? No?
Scramble them a little bit.
She moves them around so I don't know what I mean. We'll fix that, Pastor. We'll see if he's really a preacher or not. 2 Timothy chapter 4, beginning verse number 8, he says, Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness with the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but all those that love his appearing. And then he gets down to where the rubber meets the road. He says, Do thy diligence to come shortly unto me, for Demas has forsaken me, having loved this present world, and is departed unto Thessalonica. Cretans to Galatia, Titus unto Dalmatia. Only Luke is with me. Take Mark and bring him with you, because he is profitable for me in this ministry. See, it came a time in Paul's life when even what he threw away he needed to lean on. We all need each other. You know, those of you that are having marriage difficulties, what would you do without them? Those of you that have fusses and fights with your kids, I saw 2 or 3 smiles. No, don't go there. Lean on the other side. The other side. Well, I could have more guns. I could have more freedom. I wouldn't have to listen to that yammer all the time. I could do what I want, when I want. Yeah, you could do it by yourself.
Kristen's like,
You got it right. And I wasn't even talking to them. I'm talking to these two. Who is this? It's coming up out of the wilderness, leaning on her beloved. What are you leaning on this morning? You leaning on your own talents and abilities? You leaning on your own knowledge? Or you leaning on Jesus? Y'all, any of you go to history class in school?
yes.
A couple of you did. You actually taught it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, crap, I'm in trouble.
Uh-oh.
Well, if I get this wrong, Ray, you need to go get a pop or something. While I tell this story. God, that's like preaching to a room full of preachers. That verse is wrong. It wasn't Demas, it was Damas. I told y'all last week that I get critiqued every time I open this camera. That's all right. But anyway, there was a guy, he was in charge of Britain, right? Winston Churchill?
Charge of what?
Britain? He's a big dude over there.
Prime Minister.
Yeah, that's the word for it, Prime Minister. See, I'm not smart, but I got people who are in my church. But Winston Churchill had a bad attitude. He kind of reminds me of me. He could tick people off without trying. He could say things. I'll give you an example. There was a Lady Asquith. Is that right? Asquith? You don't know? A history teacher. I got it. But they were at a party, and Winston Churchill liked to drink. And he got drunk. And she looked over and said, "Sir, I perceive that thou art drunk." And he said, "Ma'am, I perceive that thou art ugly.
No.
And tomorrow I'll be sober, but you'll still be ugly."
I haven't heard of that.
They have that one. But that was the kind of person that Winston Churchill, he could tick people off without even trying. But he could encourage Britain when they were going through stuff, when they were getting ready to get control and take it over. He could encourage them and lift them up and give them the fighting power to go forward like nobody else could. But he had a wayward word. I kind of like him. She told him the next day, she said, "If I was married to you, I would poison you." He said, "Ma'am, if I was married to you, I'd drink it." But that was the kind of person he was. Like I said, he sounds like me. I mean, I can tick people off without even trying. I get people call me up, "You know you made me mad this week." I'm not surprised, but what did I do? But there was a guy, his name was Ismay. And what he would do is behind Churchill's back, he would schmooze it over. He would send flowers or an apology letter or whatever. And he would say, "This is," you know, like that lady, he would have told that lady, he said, "You know, I really didn't mean to say what," you know how you husbands are, you know, you tell them lies to your wife, you really didn't mean, you did mean every word of it. You just, you too little down there, boy. Anyway, but he would schmooze it over for Churchill. Unbeknown to Churchill, he would smooth it over. And at the end of the war, and after everything was won and everything, Winston Churchill said, he said, "I owe more to General Ismay than to anyone else in this war." And he appointed him as the first head over NATO. Because he leaned. Winston Churchill, everybody remembers Winston Churchill. Prime Minister, except for Ty, he don't go to history class anymore. But nobody, except Kirsten, knows anything about General Ismay. Because he was what he leaned on. You see, everybody sees the deck, but nobody sees all the supports. Everybody sees how nice and level it is, but they don't see all the props up under it. And see, and everybody sees us, but they don't see what's propped us up. They don't see what's got us to where we are. They just see Pastor Randy standing behind the pulpit. They don't see all the hell that we went through to get here. When you're going through hell, keep on going. Don't slow down. If you're scared, don't show it. You might get out before the devil even knows your name or knows you're there. She came up out of the wilderness. She came up out of the wilderness, leaning on her beloved. We all need somebody at some point to lean on. Ty and Ray, come up here a minute, please. Ty, get in the middle between me and Ray.
Please don't smash me.
No, we're not. Not really. Step over that way and lean on him. Just lean. The camera's not covering all of us. It's just getting the pretty.
Well, a lot of cover.
There we go. Now we got us on. Here, hold it. Good. Don't push no buttons, just hold it. Jeez.
I
Now,
like pushing buttons.
Ray's gonna fall, and he's gonna lean on Ty. I'm gonna fall, and I'm gonna lean on Ty. You see, we're both leaning in two different directions, but we're leaning on the same thing. What causes me to lean may not cause Ray to lean.
Yeah.
Ray may not have a problem with what I have a problem with. But I may not have a problem with what Ray has a problem with, but we both need to lean. And we can both lean on Ty. And he's going to stabilize us both. And Ray ain't leaning very hard because I keep pushing him this way. We need to lean here, bud. Lean. There you go.
Don't you move.
But now we're leaning. But we're both leaning on Ty. We're both leaning opposite directions, but we both have this stable force in between. Thank you, Ray. God bless you. But it's the same way with you and me in life. What causes me to lean may not give you a minute's problem. And what causes you to lean may not bother me. But we can both lean on our beloved.
That's right.
And he's strong enough to handle it from both directions. Who is this? Comes up out of the wilderness, leaning on their beloved. If you don't have a time of struggle in your life, you're a liar. If there's not days when you decide, I'm not real sure I won't be a Christian today, you're probably lying. But it's what you do with that. It's which direction you lean. Because if you lean to the direction where there's no support, it's like Ray said, don't move. Because you're going to fall. And if you lean on anything but Jesus, you're going to fall. I don't want to fall anymore. I've fallen enough. I don't want to fall anymore. And my responsibility as a recovering leaner is to be someone that somebody can lean on. And it's yours too. This couple was honest enough to say that they were having some marriage issues. There's 10 more couples in here that have already had marriage issues.
That's right.
I've been at it for 41 years. And I still ain't so sure she likes me. Leaning on Jesus. Leaning on Jesus. Who is this? It's coming up out of the wilderness. I love that phrase. Coming up out of the wilderness.
Yeah.
Leaning on her beloved. We all need a general Ishmael in our life. We all need an Aaron in our life. We all need a Moses in our life. But what we need more than any of those is we need Jesus. I hope it's helped somebody this morning. I hope you realize, I'm going to throw this in too. Sometimes what you're leaning on may seem hard and ungiving, but that's what it is that's holding you up. I don't know where that come from because I ain't that smart. Anyway, y'all have a good afternoon.